Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful holiday season. I know that this year may have been tough for some of us, myself included, but I'm sure we can all pull through together with some holiday spirit. After all, this is my favorite time of year. When I think of Christmas, a lot of things come to mind. Decorations, lights, the smell of a very fragrant dying tree in my living room. But one thing everyone probably has on their mind at this time of year is presents. If you're old enough, like me, you have to treat yourself most times. But as a child, getting presents was an incredible treat. No, not everyone celebrates Christmas. But the thought of giving and getting gifts, I'd imagine, is in many households. It's a season for giving, and the season for throwing money into whatever you want for yourself and others. When I was a kid, and many others too, I'd write down what I truly wanted and spoke to a man in red at a shopping mall. We all knew how we couldn't give less of a damn about what us kids wanted, but it felt good to tell Santa what you wanted for Christmas. And then the wait. You'd wait as Christmas presents were either piled up under the tree or they'd magically come into existence the night before Christmas. You'd wake up and scream to your parents to wake the hell up before you're getting your shit kicked in for cursing out your parents so early in the morning. That never happened, by the way. I promise you that didn't happen. What was most important, though, was seeing the things you wanted under the tree and being able to play with the new game system or the coolest toys. That would indicate a good Christmas day. Along with the feast of your favorites, you'd set off the new year with a good mindset for a happy year to come. Nowadays, this isn't the scene for me, but I'm older. It just makes sense. When I was a child, I always had game systems and technology on my list. However, I can recall a few times when I would go to the store and look for other items that my parents would obviously watch to see what I wanted. While the aforementioned items were on my list, one set of items always got my interest, at least a glance from me. Art kits. I've never gotten one for Christmas, but my parents weren't concerned about that anyway, so I would never get them. They were pretty sure that I was going to become a scientist or something. As a result, my parents decided to give me consoles and laptops, in the hope that I'd become a computer scientist. I was never encouraged to be an artist, so I'd never received supplies, until I got into art much later in life, a few years ago to be honest. So now, here we are. I'm an adult now, and being that it's a time of giving, I think back to those days of old, wishing I could have indulged a bit with one of those forbidden presents of my youth. I don't get many gifts anymore unless they're meant to last me. Art supplies I tend to buy myself, since I like to inspect the product I'm getting. I am a professional after all. That's right, I am a professional. I've been working with art supplies, trained to get a proper degree in it. I know what's good to me and what I'd avoid. I think it would be a good idea to look in depth at one of those forbidden art sets and see if they're actually worth using after all. Yeah, in fact I think this would be a great time for you and I to have ourselves a little experiment. I'll go over an art kit and I'll have an in-depth look at it. I'll tell you what I like and what I don't like, and you can choose what you think about it. Sounds fair? Great. Now, I'm an adult. I won't be getting this for Christmas, obviously. That means I'll have to get one for myself. Luckily for us, this time of year is packed on sales and inventory that needs to be cleared out, so we'll have to find one that most people can conceivably get at a fair price. We also need some basic material to make this work. I can't just half-ass this. Well, looks like the stage is set. We've got business to attend to. So, let's get shopping. Jackpot. Ooh, looks comfy. Hello, cutie. Push to start. Alright, looks like we've got everything we need. All I have to do now is go over everything. Seems simple enough. I'm actually excited to see what this kit has in store. I've chosen the deluxe painting easel set by Artist Loft. This brand was found at Michael's Arts and Crafts. I'll start with a preface before I begin. I actually love Artist Loft materials. I buy their sketchbooks and pencils all the time. They're not too bad, and they give a good budget option if you can grab the products. This particular set I believe was $49 USD, but when I went to the store, there was a discount rendering it about $29. The price gives me a good idea of what I'm working with, but we'll see how it goes as we go forward. The box claims to have quite a bit inside, with over 106 individual items. Some highlights include oil, acrylic, and watercolor paints, drawing pads, and palettes. The box is also supposed to be an easel, which seems really useful. Speaking of boxes, the box seems sturdy enough. It's made out of some type of wood and it has its own carrying handle. On its front are two metal clips that hold the case shut. They do their job well enough. Once open, we see that there are different pencils, pastels, and blocks of watercolor paint. This section also includes a flower palette, an eraser, and a sharpener for your pencils. So far we've got all kinds of treats. On the exterior of the case, close to the handle, are two more metal clips. Unlocking them grants access to the acrylic, oil, and watercolor tubes of paint, as well as our brushes and palette knives. There is also a tip guide to painting with oil and acrylic paints. Nifty. Finally, the pack includes two additional palettes for your paint, one plastic and one wood. You also get a drawing pad, a watercolor pad, and some gridded canvas blocks. There are also instructions, but honestly, we don't really need these, right? Now comes the part where we actually use these products. I'll be reviewing everything I can from paint to paper. I'll also be supplementing my paper supply with a trusted brand that I really like, Canton Watercolor. I won't go over techniques for painting, but perhaps I can one of these days. Now with everything here, let's get to it. Starting with setup, watercolor paint needs water, so get yourself a mug or something and fill it up. You'll definitely need it. If you're also like me, consider getting something to cover your workspace. Oil pastels and mini paints are incredibly difficult to remove. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, you definitely want to make sure you're not using anything that you might accidentally drink out of. If you drink this stuff, any of the watercolor paint or any of the acrylic or oil paints, you can definitely get yourself sick. I've seen it happen before in the studio. Do not let it happen. Just be mindful of what you're using, okay? Cool. Let's start with the pencils. They're relatively straightforward. This particular set comes with two pencils, one 2B and one HB. These two provide a decent range of values to help you get started on your sketching journey. The pencils are soft as I would expect them to be and provide clean lines when put on the provided sketch pad. The pad itself is alright, I wouldn't use it after the first time. Paper is too flimsy for my taste. The verdict is simple. The pencils are pencils. I personally prefer mechanical pencils, but they work. The pad is a thumbs down though. I don't like it very much at all. Moving on, we'll try the watercolor pencils next on the provided pad, and then we'll move on to the larger paper to see if they're worth the price. Watercolor pencils work similarly to traditional watercolor. The difference is the paint is fashioned into a pencil. They can be liquefied when touched by water and can be spread by using a brush to make paintings. Using the provided watercolor pad, the pencil feels scratchy. I'm not used to watercolor pencils, but they always had me interested. I wouldn't have picked the color set, it feels too limited, and while you could blend this all to make new colors, I would try to move on to oils and acrylics. The pencils work just like watercolor at least. Somewhat. And the paper is as absorbent as it needs to be. I'm not too fond of the hardness of the pencils, they don't lay down as much paint as I'd like. With my larger paper, the same issues apply. I'd say that I like the pencils even less after using them here. And given the limited palette, you'd have to get some of your favorite colors from the stores anyway. The verdict? I wouldn't use them too much, I'd rather use regular paint. Next up is another media I don't use often. Pastels. Pastels are basically crayons. Often, they're bound in something like oil or other mediums that is mixed with a pigment and fashioned into a stick. The first pastels, which are soft pastels, are easy to use and spread nicely. Word of advice though, while they blend pretty easily, wash your hands after. Pastels smear all over the place otherwise. Overall, I like these. They're soft and could be really useful for filling in drawings with color. I would just invest in more colors, which I feel is a major theme for this whole set. Oil pastels are next. They're similar to the last bunch, with oil being their binder instead. As such, they can ruin clothing and cloth, so wash your hands with soap if they smear. These are much softer than the soft pastels, and you can usually get a really rich color with really good color variation. Since they're oil though, they're soft and they wear pretty easily, but I can't complain about these too much. I would just make sure that you put them in a plastic bag and keep them away from other items so they don't degrade and smear on other things. Now comes the main event. The paints. We'll start with the watercolor pucks. Each puck is just a dry cake of watercolor paint, and you can rehydrate them with some water from your very wet paintbrush. The paint is decent in quality, spreading a decent bit before it becomes significantly harder to rehydrate on paper. Making a quick little test proved pretty easy, though I noticed the provided paper can't handle too much water before it falls apart. How sad. On better paper, the paint actually holds much better and even blends properly. I don't recommend the provided paper for this paint, but the 16 different colors are a pretty good way to get into watercolor painting. There are also tubes of watercolor paint, which I find are much better. They spread easy, and they're very good at blending. Using the flower palette, this feels much better to me than just the pucks. I'd use these instead and just buy more paint to add to your collection. I should mention that these brushes are pretty sturdy too. I like them, but don't plan on using just this. You do yourself justice getting bigger or better quality brushes. Just saying. Next on the list is acrylic, and disclaimer, I hate acrylic. Oh, hey, shut up. This is my disclaimer. I get to say what I want. Let me explain, okay? It dries too quickly, and often it dries darker than what you want it to mix as. I don't like acrylic. I've had bad issues with it. I just wanted to get that out the way before I started. Okay? Cool. Since I'm not very fond of them, I'll use the wooden palette to mix my paint, and the gridded canvas for my test. The kit gives you a pair of plastic palette knives to mix your paint with, but I always prefer to use my brushes anyway. To each their own. After getting a quick abstraction up, I noticed the body of paint wasn't too bad. I prefer thicker paint though, since it can really spread and be played with. Regardless, the paint is of nice quality, and I appreciate the ease of mixing. The base gives you a set of colors that help you mix and get a chance to understand color theory. Not a bad set of beginner level paint. Just get some real canvas. You could pull off something nice that way. On the subject of canvas, the pre-gridded canvas is, it's alright. It's already pre-primed and it's actually pretty good for what it's done for, but you would need some real canvas to actually push what you're doing. This set is supposed to get you into painting, which makes sense, but I would just get some real canvas and use the paint that you're given. It's much smoother that way. Overall, okay product. Wouldn't use it. Last up is my favorite. Oil. Oil-based paint is much more up my alley. I like it for the longer dry times it has and a couple of other things that I like. Just be very careful that you don't get it on anything cloth. It'll ruin clothes and carpet alike. You're provided with the same colors as the acrylic paint, but there are a few things I should mention. Oil paint needs to be washed with soap and water. Using simple water by itself will clog any drains you may have. Also, I wanted to wait until I got a little bit further before I mentioned a big flaw I had with this set. Out of the whole set, I feel the deluxe set should have the proper mediums or modifiers to make the paint spread just a little bit further. A quick explanation. A medium is something that can make a paint spread a little bit more or add body to it. A modifier is something that changes the property of a paint body. Different types of paint require different things like oils, chemicals, or extracts to change the thickness or drying times of paint. For example, I have two I can share, a bottle of linseed oil and a bottle of Galkid. Linseed oil is what binds the pigments in oil paint, and it thins it out so it can spread more easily. It makes drying times longer though, and it makes the paint body just a little bit thinner. What this means is, oftentimes it makes the total drying time take somewhere between 3 to 4 days depending on the volume of paint to oil. I know the bottle looks a little bit gnarly, but I got it from school. It was already pretty crunchy looking. Galkid is a modifier. It speeds up the drying time of paint. It's similar to oils like Stand Oil in that it's a lot thicker and turns the paint into an almost honey-like consistency. It's expensive too, for such a small bottle, but it's worth it for someone who likes to experiment with paint drying. If you're looking to get into acrylic paint, then get gloss medium or matte medium or acrylic medium, all of those are available. And if you're looking to get into watercolor, then use gum arabic medium. If you're going to get into painting, you should definitely get some type of paint medium to experiment how you want your paint to come out. I like to use Galkid and linseed oil, but you can use whatever you like. Back to the oil paints. I'll be using the base paint only, since it makes the most sense to review the paint as a standalone material. I should warn you, I use similar paint colors for this experiment. Since the set comes with no oil, you'd either have to use dish soap on standby, or have a rag, or use an actual oil to clean your brush. Pro tip, you can use corn oil, but it might make your paint a little bit yellow. Since these aren't provided though, I'll work with similar colors until I can clean my brush, otherwise, you can mix whatever you want. The paint seems relatively thick, which is a good sign, and it spreads and mixes well, as I thought it would. I like this paint. It's very user-friendly, which is a plus, and it has more colors than I would think it would. However, I would definitely supplement your material with other colors that you might buy from the store or what have you. I'll be sure to keep using these while I still have them. So, what's my verdict? Do I like this paint set? Yes, quite a bit. It's not perfect, but I like what you're given. The colors you get from each medium are a good building block to start your own collection. You can see that Artist Loft is quite a decent deal. This set isn't perfect though. The paper is pretty lackluster, and the lack of paint mediums for your paint will limit how much your paint will be spreading, and you'll have to probably buy more paint as a result. But this set is a pretty good start in your art endeavors and to anybody who might be interested in painting. I'd recommend this to someone who's trying to get into painting and is willing to try multiple types to find what they like. This is a good little treat under the Christmas tree, and for only $30 on sale, you can't get any better for what you're getting, honestly. I think this would be a good gift for newly budding artists, you know? It's not meant to last. Make sure you get some materials for someone who may be interested in getting very serious about using this product. I would certainly recommend watercolor paper or better brushes to start with. The natural bristles on the regular brushes fall out pretty easily, and that may lead to problems later. You still can't beat the price, and this would certainly spark a creativity streak in someone who really likes to be creative. The deluxe easel painting set was a fun little gift from me to me. It makes me happy that I can share my childhood dream of getting one of these little sets with all of you. And it feels great to finish this decade with something like this off my bucket list. Well, with that, I have to go get ready for Christmas myself. Thanks for joining me. It's been an interesting year and a more interesting decade. I grew as an artist, and I found a place in the world that I feel most comfortable in. 2020 is upon us, and I hope we can have more fun and I can share with more of you all later. I intend to keep making videos in the coming decade, and if you're willing, I'll do my best to make better content for everyone to enjoy. I hope you all have a Merry Christmas, have some happy holidays, and find fortune in a Happy New Year. See you later!